We're going to go back to Hebrews tonight, and we're going to be looking at the beginning of chapter 12. But before we do that, I kind of want to recap chapter 11 because it's been, I figured it up, it's been almost 2 months. So I want us to remember where we left off, and this will help chapter 12 to make so much more sense. So if you remember, chapter 11 is the hall of faith, and it starts out with a definition of what faith is. It's the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Faith is the substance and the evidence of Christianity. Faith is what defines us, and it's what demonstrates that we are really regenerate. By faith, we understand that God created the entire universe by speaking it into existence. Pastor Wes has been talking about that for a few weeks now, and he talked about it this morning. But God created everything we observe, everything we understand from nothing, ex nihilo, from nothing, out of nothing. And we know that by faith. And by faith, Abel offered the better sacrifice. By faith, Enoch was translated. By faith, Noah prepared the ark because God warned him about a disaster, something that had never happened before and will never happen again. A flood so big that every part, all of the land of the entire planet was covered. By faith, Abraham trusted God to leave home and go somewhere he'd never been, and to a place he had no idea where it was. God said, get up and go, and I'll tell you later where you're going. That's faith. And by faith, his wife, Sarah, was able to have a son when she was 90 years old. 90. How? Because she trusted God. She trusted that he would keep his promise, and he did. By faith, Abraham, many years later, offered up that same son, knowing that God was able to raise Isaac from the dead. Abraham reckoned Isaac dead, and he received him back 3 days later. A fuzzy picture of the death and resurrection of Christ. And then by faith, Isaac blessed his sons, Jacob and Esau. And then by faith, Jacob blessed his grandsons and worshiped even when he was very old. See, you're never too old to worship God. By faith, Joseph made arrangements to be buried in the promised land. He knew that God would keep his promise of a land, a nation, and a seed. So he made arrangements to be buried there. By faith, Moses' parents hid him, knowing that he had value. He was made in God's image. Every child has value. They bear the image of their Creator, and they should be protected. And then by faith, Moses, when he was older, chose to suffer and be counted with the people of God. He chose that, and he chose to experience the reproach of Christ rather than be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter and enjoy all the opulence and the riches of Egypt. By faith, he forsook Egypt. By faith, he kept the Passover. By faith, he led the children of Israel through the Red Sea. Later on, by faith, Rahab hid the spies. By faith, many others subdued kingdoms. Many others were made valiant in battle. By faith, lions' mouths were shut. Fiery furnaces were overcome. By faith, the dead were raised to life again. Now, some of the Old Testament saints were tortured. Some of them were stoned. Some of them were imprisoned, sawn in two. Some were poor, tormented, afflicted, wandering around in goat skins, living in caves. But all of them had faith. And that faith was in the promise that they never received. And the Bible tells us that this world wasn't worthy of any of these men and women of faith. Yet God has given us something better. He gave us Jesus. He gave us the Christ, the Messiah. He has been revealed to us. And that's where we're going to pick up tonight. So if you want to stand with me, we'll look at our text, Hebrews chapter 12. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest you be wearied and faint in your minds." You may be seated. I love that God knows we are all so different. And it takes different kinds of analogies to get people to better understand Scripture. And I also love it when the analogies are sports related, because I get those. Not because I'm an athlete, but because I like sports, and I think those types of analogies are easier to get because I've lived most of them. And I think our text tonight is extremely relatable to most of us. Now, I know most of you, many of you don't still run races, that you don't still compete. But a lot of you did. Now, some of you still do. Some of you still run for fun. And you keep using that word fun, but I'm not sure it means what you think it means. But as humans, we have this innate desire to compete. We have this innate desire to compare ourselves to others. And it seems like just as soon as we learn to walk, it begins. And sometimes even before that, with our parents comparing when we started walking to when our friends started walking. I've heard it. You know, my son started walking when he was 1, and then the next guy, well, my son started walking when he was 6 months old, and the next guy, well, my son started walking when he was 6 weeks old. And the last guy, oh yeah, well, my son started walking in the womb, and I had the video of the ultrasound to prove it. That's how we are, right? But go to any playground. Go listen to these kids when they're playing outside. They want to know who's the fastest. You hear, you want to race? Or, hey, I'll race you. I'll race you to the slide and back. Or on the field, I'll race you to the 50. Or whatever. And it's almost always a sprint. It's a short race from here to there, right? It's always somewhere that you can see how I'll race you to that thing. But the Christian life isn't like that. Christianity is an endurance race. And some of us are learning that the hard way. I read a story. John MacArthur talked about the first time he ran a half mile. And I laughed and cried at the same time because I experienced almost exactly the same thing. The first time I ran a 440, and the last time, consequently, that I ran a 440, and I know that they probably don't even call them that anymore. That was back in the old days. But I was used to running the 50-yard dash and the 100-yard dash, right? I was okay at that. So we get up there, and the gun goes off, and I run that. I put everything into that first 100 yards, and I led almost everybody. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to smoke these people. But once I hit that first bend in the track, and I realized that I'm going to have to come all the way back around to where we started, I knew I was in trouble. And I could feel the strength just leaving my body. And to add insult to injury, I watched as everyone else in the race passed me till I was dead last, which I thought would be shortened soon to just dead. But I made it. I finally got there, stumbled across the finish line, and those of you who run know this feeling. Your mouth is so dry that you could spit cotton balls. And my vision started to get dark because I was just completely gassed. I had nothing left. And I thought I was going to pass out, maybe even die. But I ran the race. But I ran poorly. I finished poorly because I wasn't prepared. I didn't know what I was doing. Had no idea what I was doing. And many Christians, maybe even some of you, are living this way. You're going to finish the race, but you're not going to finish well. And some don't even care. They're satisfied just to limp across the finish line. They say, well, I'm going to heaven. That's good enough for me. And I don't really know if that's your attitude. I'm not even sure if you are a Christian. It's a horrible perspective. And Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 9 and verse 24, don't you know that everyone runs the race, but only one receives the prize? So run in a way that you'll obtain it. Run in a way that you'll win. And he goes on in the next verse to tell us that athletes train and discipline themselves to win a perishable crown, but the one we win is imperishable. So how much more should we train? How much more should we prepare for that? This is the most important aspect of our lives. It's what defines us. It should be our number one priority. Look back at the first part of verse 1. He says, wherefore, seeing we are also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. So, how do we run? First, we have to run with encouragement. Because we have the testimonies of all these men and women who have gone before us, proving that a life of faith is possible, a life of faith is worthwhile, and a life of faith will be rewarded by God. We're encouraged by the lives of these men and women, and many others who have gone before us. Their examples inspire us to keep going. He says there's a great cloud, a great multitude, and there is a great multitude of men and women we can draw encouragement from. Not just the people listed in chapter 11, but many more. Read Fox's Book of Martyrs. So many people lived by faith and gave everything to serve Christ. Now, I want you to understand something here in this verse, something that I didn't really grasp until just recently. The word translated witnesses here is the Greek word martus. And that's where we get our word martyr from. And sometimes it's actually translated martyr. So, this is what I want you to think about. Our encouragement, our motivation for running the race is not that we're being observed by these Old Testament saints and that we will probably or potentially be given a high five or an attaboy by them. We're inspired by the races that they have already run. We're motivated by their examples. They're not spectators cheering us on. They're examples of faith to follow. Their life encourages us to run in the same way that they did, to follow their pattern of godly living and sacrifice. I mean, think about it just for a minute, okay? How narcissistic are we to think that they would be watching us and cheering for us? Does it seem weird to you? Does that not seem weird to you that they would be in heaven with Christ, the Messiah, the person they yearned for so long? But instead of watching him, they're watching us. That doesn't make sense to me. Does that make sense to you? No. We aren't encouraged by their cheers, which we can't hear, by the way. We're encouraged by their lives. We're encouraged by the examples that they left us. These aren't the people on the side of the road or the side of the course that are there cheering us on and handing us water. That's not them. We're encouraged to live by the lives that they lived. Look at the second part of verse 1. He says, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. So we run with encouragement, but we also run with efficiency. How do we do that? First, by eliminating weight. He says we lay aside every weight. Why? Why? Because it's hard to run with extra weight. Everybody knows that. The lighter you are, the faster and more efficiently you'll run. If you do any kind of research on the Olympics or Greek athletes, they would strip away every unnecessary piece of clothing, actually all of their clothing, so they could run unhindered, unencumbered. And that's the idea here. Now, to help you understand, just recently I had Xander start wearing ankle weights. okay, to help him build up his leg muscles, to lighten his feet, okay? He has heavy feet. I don't know where that, I guess his mom gave that to him. I don't know. But these weights are just for training. He has to take them off, or they're going to slow him down. They'll hinder him from running. And that's the point the writer of Hebrews was making. The people that he was writing to, these people were being weighed down by the law. They were being weighed down by the Levitical system. Now, the law is good to bring us to Christ, right? It's a schoolmaster. It showed us our sin, but it was only temporary. It's just for a guide. It's just for training. So the Hebrews needed to lay that legalism aside. We need to lay it aside because it only weighs us down. We don't need it. We don't need to keep all of the rules. We don't need to keep all of the traditions. We don't need to keep making sacrifices. We don't need to do all of those things and follow all of the ceremonies. We need to eliminate that weight and run with efficiency. And we do that also by embracing the truth. The Hebrews needed to embrace the truth and turn away from the Levitical system with its endless sacrifices and embrace Christ, the one and only perfect sacrifice. That's who they needed to turn to. We need to do the same thing. We need to embrace the truth of what Christ has done and quit worrying about checking boxes and worrying about all these things. Oh, I need to do this and this and this, and that's the things that I have to do. We need to lay that aside. And we need to stop being so easily entangled by sin and stop accepting defeat. Too many Christians get tripped up by the same sin over and over and over. So they just give up and they accept it. They say, well, I guess that's just my besetting sin. You know, old so-and-so, he's just a drunk. That's his besetting sin, I guess. You know, Miss Jenkins, she's just a gossip. That's her besetting sin. That's how she is. Mr. Smith, he's just a jerk all the time. He's angry. That's his besetting sin. Listen, this verse is not an acknowledgement that we all have besetting sins and that they're okay. It's a command to lay them aside. I know we all have our soft spots. We all have weak points in our armor. Some of us are tempted by things that others aren't. Satan knows that. We know that. But we don't just accept failure and try to run with something tangled around our leg. It doesn't work. We need to cut that thing off and lay it aside so we can run the race efficiently and effectively. Now, I'm not saying we're never going to trip and we're never going to fall and we're never going to fail. We all know we will. But we need to do everything we can to try not to trip, to try not to fall. We confess our sins and run in the opposite direction. We make every effort to cut away and put aside the thing that would trip us up, not letting it just hang around our feet, ready to topple us at any moment. You know which sin you fall into the easiest. You know. And so does the devil. But listen, if you're a drunk, remove all the alcohol from your house and don't go to stores that sell it, or don't go into the aisles of the stores that sell it. Don't do it. If you're a gossip, delete Facebook and all of your social media and get on a Bible reading plan. Pretty simple. If you're a jerk and you're angry all the time, maybe stop watching Fox News. Start watching the Living Waters channel. Do that. And get on a Bible reading plan. If you have problems looking at pornography, turn off the computer, turn off your phone, whatever it is. Get a blocker, get an accountability partner, and get into the Bible. Embrace the truth, not your sin. Now, the third way we run with efficiency is by enduring the agony. He says, let us run with patience. And the word translated patience here is hupomone, and that means a cheerful or hopeful endurance. This is determination. It's a determination to keep going no matter what, to endure. Don't slow down. Don't quit, no matter how hard it gets. Listen, I know sometimes it seems unbearable, like nothing is going right. You've poured your life into somebody only to have them slight you or abandon you. And it feels like it would just be easier to quit. But then you look at those who have gone before you, and they had it far worse, and they didn't quit. They didn't give up. They kept running the race. And that word race, it's the Greek word agone. It's where we get the English word agony from. So this life of faith that we're called to, it's not just a leisurely jog around the block. It's an arduous task. It requires every ounce of our effort, every bit of our focus, every bit of our attention. And it's not going to be easy. But nothing worth anything ever is easy. Look at verse 2. It says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. We run this endurance race with eyes on Christ. We fix our eyes on Jesus. This is not just a casual glance. When we say we fix our eyes on him, we look away from everything else and we look to him. We focus only on Christ. Because he's the one who originated our faith. He is our supreme example. He founded our faith and he will perfect it. Philippians 1:6 says, being confident of this very thing, that he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it or will be faithful to complete it until the day of Jesus. He started it. He'll finish it. He is with us when the race starts. He'll be there at the finish line, and he's there everywhere in between. Jesus endured the cross. He said he endured the cross for the joy that was set before him. What was the joy? Now, I've heard a lot of different answers to that question, most of them not even close to the right answer. But what was it? The joy that Christ that was set before Christ was the accomplishment of the Father's will. He endured the cross knowing that on the other side was the fulfillment of the thing that he had been set to do. And that's to do the Father's will. To accomplish the plan of redemption. It says he despised the shame. He didn't like it, but he endured it for our sake. And if you look at the death on the cross, the shame was one of the biggest parts of it. But for him, it was even worse. He bore this shameful accusation of blasphemy. He endured shameful mocking. He endured a shameful beating. He wore a shameful robe and a shameful crown. He died a shameful death to give us a guiltless life. He did all of that for us. And now he sits at the right hand of God in a place of honor, in a posture of rest, because the work is done. It is finished. He did everything to accomplish God's will. And for that joy, that's why he did it. And as we look to Christ and follow him, that should be our motivation to accomplish God's will for us, to bring him glory, to hear him say, well done. That's why we run. Look at verse 3. For considered him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest you be wearied and faint in your minds. Finally, in this endurance race, we run without exhaustion by considering Christ and all that he went through. Jesus is the preeminent example of someone who was willing to suffer in obedience to the Father and his will. He endured hostility from sinners. He endured hostility from his own people. He endured hostility even from those who called him friend. The best man that ever lived was treated the worst by mankind. He was falsely accused, beaten. He was spit on, mocked, hung on a cross. Listen, no matter how bad we think we have it, it will never be anywhere close to what Christ suffered. We suffer persecution. We're under pressure. We feel exhausted. But none of that compares to what Jesus went through. So let's follow the instruction we're given in Galatians 6:9. Paul says, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. We may think or feel like we're all alone, like Elijah did, but he wasn't alone. And we're not alone. We're all in this race together, and we can look to those who went before us and be encouraged. We lay aside the weight. We run with purpose. We focus on Christ. Where is your focus? Earlier tonight, we sang, Be Thou My Vision, one of my favorite hymns. But in verse 1, it says, Be Thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me save that Thou art. Thou my best thought by day and by night, waking or sleeping, Thy presence my light. Is Christ your vision? Is he your best thought by day and night? Is he your best thought? Is he what most of your thoughts are devoted to? Or is it something else? Is he your best thought? Or is it money? Is he your best thought? Or is it pornography? Is he your best thought, or is it what you want? Your selfish ambition? Is he your best thought, or is it worry? Is he what occupies your mind, or is it your career? Is he your best thought, or is it your spouse or your children? What are your eyes? What are your thoughts fixed on? That's the question. Now, as we stand together, Brother Russ comes up here to sing, lead us in a song. In our text tonight, the writer of Hebrews said, let us lay aside. Let us run the race. He was inviting some of his readers to get into the race. And maybe that's you. Maybe you need to repent and trust in Christ and join us in this race of Christianity. Maybe you need to get in the race. Maybe some of you are in the race already, but you're just not running well. You're tired. So many things are weighing you down. What do you need to lay aside? What do you need to lay aside tonight? Maybe you've been distracted. Maybe you're looking at all kinds of things other than Jesus. Don't focus on problems. Don't focus on circumstances or the people around you. Focus on him. Fix your eyes on him. Run with endurance. Will you commit to do that? Will you commit to do that tonight? Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will go strangely dim.